On April 17, 1955, Albert Einstein was admitted to the hospital due to chest pain. At that moment, he was unaware that the largest artery in his body, the section of the aorta extending into his abdomen, had bulged and ruptured, causing internal bleeding known as an abdominal aortic aneurysm. He was preparing a speech to deliver on television for Israel's 7th anniversary. His doctors wanted to take him into surgery immediately. However, having undergone an operation for the same reason 8 years earlier, Einstein seemed to realize his time had come, and he declined with these immortal words: "I want to go when I want. It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share, it is time to go. I will do it elegantly." And indeed, in the early hours of the next morning, he passed away at Princeton Hospital. However, the truly remarkable event occurred during Einstein's autopsy. The pathologist performing the procedure, Thomas Harvey, removed the great genius's brain just 7 hours after his death, without his family's consent, dissected it, and preserved it by injecting a 10% formalin solution. Harvey's goal was to study what he believed to be a unique brain and uncover what made Einstein so exceptionally intelligent. However, Einstein despised being idolized during his lifetime. For this reason, he had requested that his body be cremated and his ashes scattered in secret. In other words, Harvey had violated Einstein's will. Moreover, he not only removed his brain, but also took his eyes and gifted them to Einstein's ophthalmologist, Henry Abrams. When the doctor realized he was in trouble, he went to Einstein's son Hans and convinced him of the importance of what he had done, managing to obtain retroactive consent, thus avoiding legal repercussions. However, Hans had one condition. His father's brain would only be studied for scientific research, and the results would be published in reputable academic journals. Harvey promised this and stated he would publish his findings within a year at the latest. Since that day, Einstein's brain has been the subject of numerous studies. So, what did researchers find? Can we uncover traces of this remarkable genius in his brain? Let's take a look. The most common belief about Einstein is that, despite his remarkable intelligence, his school grades were as bad as ours. It's not hard to understand why people want to believe this, because this thought brings comfort to many. If even Einstein was treated as slow in school, maybe we too can become like him one day. If you want to succeed, the first thing you need to do is stop lying to yourself. Of course, school grades alone aren't enough to determine your future, but that doesn't change the fact that Einstein's grades were quite good. How do we know this? For example, his maturity exam grades from September 30th, 1896, were based on the Swiss grading system at the time, where 6 was the highest grade and 1 was the lowest. If you take a close look at the report card, you'll see that he scored 6 in algebra, geometry, physics, and history, 5 in chemistry, natural history, and German language and literature, and 4 in drawing and geography. His lowest grade was a 3 in French language and literature, which isn't that bad, and Einstein wasn't only successful in high school. Einstein's mother, Pauline, wrote a letter to his sister when Albert first started school saying, "Yesterday Albert received his report card. Once again, he's the top of his class, and his grades are excellent." So Einstein was definitely a successful student throughout his school years. Like every student, Einstein had moments where he clashed with his teachers. For example, in middle school, a teacher at the school then known as Luitpold Gymnasium once said, "I wish Einstein wasn't my student." However, the reason wasn't that Einstein was lazy, it was actually because he often sat in the back row and smiled during lessons, which bothered his teacher. The teacher thought that Einstein didn't show him respect, and at one point he angrily said, "You'll never amount to anything." But we can't judge an entire school life based on a few anecdotes. It's important to look at overall performance and grades. When we do that, it's clear that Einstein wasn't a failure as a student. So why do people keep spreading this nonsense? As I mentioned, there's a comforting side to believing that Einstein was treated as a fool by the education system. But that's not the only reason. Another potential source of the claim about Einstein's bad grades lies in the grading system used in Switzerland. Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in the German Empire and studied there until high school. In Germany's school system, unlike Switzerland's, 1 was the highest grade and 6 was the lowest. So before starting school in Switzerland, his report cards were always filled with 1s, meaning the highest grades. But many people confuse this with the lowest grade due to the Swiss system. All of this fuels confusion. However, from the letters of his family and other remaining records, we can see that Einstein's grades were always good or excellent. So, what do you think was the reason behind Einstein's excellent grades, or the genius that would later shine through? Could the secret lie in his brain? This is the question that has fascinated scientists for decades. It's not just Einstein, but can we specifically identify what makes geniuses so exceptional in their brains? How are these geniuses born? Or do they develop certain areas of their brain by focusing excessively on a particular subject? Can we distinguish this? Pathologist Thomas Harvey, perhaps without realizing it, allowed us to gain some clues through a hasty decision, mesmerized by the magnitude of the genius and mystery before him. After removing Einstein's brain, he took dozens of photos and, with his mentor, Harry Zimmerman, divided it into 240 pieces, each approximately 10 cubic centimeters, and prepared these pieces into microscope slides. These brain sections were selected based on the cerebral cortex atlas published in 1925 by von Economo and Koskinas, and largely followed the brain regions defined by Brodmann in the 19th century. In other words, the sections taken corresponded to areas related to the brain's special functions. But the problem was that neither Harvey nor his mentor Zimmerman had any expertise in neuroscience or the brain. Both were pathologists, and they could only distinguish specific pathological conditions such as brain injuries or hemorrhages. In other words, they lacked the knowledge and tools to uncover the secrets of the extraordinary brain they had. As a result, Harvey was unable to keep his promise to Hans Einstein about publishing within a year. He couldn't find anything to publish because he didn't know what to look for. This quickly turned into a major problem. Although he had obtained permission from Hans, the hospital's chief physician determined that this was not a sufficient excuse, and due to his violation of ethical rules, he was forced to resign a few days later. After struggling to find work in New Jersey for a long time, Harvey moved to the Midwest with the 2 large jars containing Einstein's brain and began working as a general practitioner. Harvey was described as quite eccentric, even a dreamer, and because of this, no academic took him seriously. For 30 years after Einstein's death, he couldn't convince anyone to study Einstein's brain. Finally, he traveled across the United States to offer the brain to Einstein's grandson in California, but his grandson also rejected it. In a way, Einstein's brain had become a curse. After all these events and wandering back and forth with the brain for a long time, he finally returned to where he started and handed over the jars containing the brain pieces to the pathologist who had been hired for his position, marking the end of his 40-year journey. From that point on, researchers began to show a bit more interest in Einstein's brain. The first study on Einstein's brain was published in 1999, 44 years after his death. After that, several other studies examined the remaining parts of Einstein's brain and the original photographs. First and foremost, Einstein's brain wasn't larger than average. On the contrary, it was quite small. A brain of a man of the same age and weight as Einstein at his time of death should weigh around 49 ounces. Einstein's brain weighed only 43 ounces. When it comes to the brain, there's no rule like the bigger, the better. For instance, a brain may be relatively small but filled with denser neural connections, potentially giving it a higher processing capacity. Now let me show you something interesting. This is the brain of an average human. This area is the frontal lobe, meaning the front part of your brain. This is the right hemisphere, and this is the left hemisphere. And this area right here is called the corpus callosum, the connection bridge that links the right and left lobes of the brain. If you pay attention, a normal brain has roughly 3 gyri, the protruding folds of the brain, in this front part. 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at one of the photographs of Einstein's brain taken by Harvey. If we look from the same angle, let's count the main lines again. 1, 2, 3, 4. It seems like there is one more gyrus. This extra gyrus is in the right frontal area, which is related to nonverbal abilities like mathematics. Not surprising, right? But that's not all. Let's look at another point. Do you see this massive fold in the same photo? Now take a look at the brain of a standard person. There's no such fold. This area is known as the hand motor knob. It's responsible for the movements of our hands and fingers, and from previous studies, we know that individuals who started playing the violin between the ages of 6 to 14 have similar structures in their brains. So, just by looking at this brain, we can say that Einstein played the violin with his right hand and started before the age of 14. Indeed, Einstein began playing the violin at 6, guided by his pianist mother, and he never stopped playing it throughout his life. Another finding was made through the counting of nerve cells in Einstein's brain sections under the microscope, revealing that the number of neurons in the 39th Brodmann area on the left side of the brain was lower. This area is related to understanding words and language processing, and indeed, Einstein couldn't speak fluently until he was 6 years old and suffered from dyslexia-like issues for a long time, such as difficulty transcribing his thoughts, remembering words, and reading aloud. So, unlike some other geniuses, Einstein didn't learn to read at 2 or start pondering abstract mathematics at 4. In short, although the significance of these findings in terms of intelligence is still debated, there were certain macro and micro differences detectable in Einstein's brain. Another controversial question is this: did Einstein have this brain anatomy from birth, which enabled his extraordinary intelligence? Or did the brain regions related to mathematics and physics develop over time due to his years of dedication to these subjects? For example, the human brain has already reached about 90% of its adult form by the age of 6. Therefore, if experience influences brain folds, this effect must begin before the age of 6, and we know that Einstein was not focusing on physics at that age. Einstein's interest in science began with a compass he received at the age of 5. However, he only started seriously pondering these subjects 5 to 10 years later. On the other hand, we still know very little about the impact of our experiences in later years on brain folds and macro anatomy. Therefore, based on the current data, we can say with high probability that Einstein was born with at least a significant portion of these variations in his brain. However, it can be said that Einstein did not become a genius merely by sitting back and relying on his innate talents. For example, the learning difficulties he faced in his childhood likely forced him to learn to think in different and new ways. Furthermore, Einstein knew how to focus on specific problems and relentlessly pursue them. Even while working at a patent office to gain financial independence, he never stopped thinking about problems related to physics and kept following the work of the most respected academics in the field. Thanks to his hard work, perseverance, and determination, he was able to transform his talent into tangible achievements. It should be understood that no one, including Einstein, could have discovered the secrets of the universe just by sitting idly. Finally, I would like to end the video with this quote from Albert Einstein: "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support me. See you in the next video. Take care."